Hello friends, it's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums, and today I have another weekly check-in reading for the last week of August, which is crazy that we're already here. So this will be for Sunday, August 23rd, all the way through Saturday, August 30th, I believe. Will be, or actually the 29th, I believe is what Saturday will be. And then we'll have the 30th and 31st next week. But the last full week of August, which is just crazy that August is here and gone and passed us by so quickly. This week we do have the full moon in Pisces on Thursday. And it will be a partial eclipse as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. And let's see what we have in store for us this week and what we can kind of keep in mind as we go through the very first week of Virgo season 2026. So happy birthday to all the Virgos out there that are celebrating. All right, what do we need to know as a collective? We have the Eight of Pentacles. All right, what do we need to do as a collective? We have the Ace of Cups. All right, what do we need to release as a collective? I want to go this over here. We have the Two of Cups. And then finally, what do we need to contemplate as a collective this week? We have the Seven of Pentacles reversed. That's funny. That's funny. And then my hands are going to be stained from, I edged this deck, and while I love the color match, for some reason it is one of the only decks that I've done where the marker that I chose has bled so much, but it's like a perfect color match. So I've just kind of left it alone. Even though I've like covered it up with other markers, it still bleeds all over me. So I don't know, it's just like blue ink in general. So I'm going to have little Smurf hands for the moment. I'm also going to pull a card from the Moonology messages deck, since we do have this partial eclipse this week. So let's kind of see what we have oracle guidance wise. All right, let's see. We have avoid drama. Ain't that the frickin' truth, you guys? Avoid drama. And then I want to do one more. I feel like I'm missing something. What should we do? You know what? It's been a long time since I've used this empathic oracle. So let's see what we have here. Let's see what we have here. We're going to put those back because it was like 4 cards. All right, so what do we need to know extra? Future. Okay, I think those are all the cards I want to pull for today. So let's kind of get into the actual reading so I can try to get this edited and posted in time because, again, I slept in a little too long. All right, so very first card for this week, what we need to know, we have the Eight of Pentacles. Now, to me, the Eight of Pentacles is a reminder of our hard work, of honing our like genius, of getting in like the zone, of our dedication and our efforts kind of coming together, and what can come of it if we stay the course, if we continue on the way that we have, or we keep doing the sort of work that we have been doing. And Pentacles are as much about the physical embodiment of this energy, in the sense of our physical health, our physical bodies, our home, our career, our money, our finances, our, behaviors, are, just so many different things when it comes to the physical elements in various areas of our life. And I think with the Eight of Pentacles, with what we need to know is that, whatever it is that maybe we've been working on that maybe feels a little bit boring, that maybe feels a little bit like, I don't really know if this is going to lead me anywhere. I don't really know if this is going to, become something eventually. I think this is kind of saying like, hey, we kind of need to stay the course. We're on the right track. We're doing the right things. And so right now, the most significant and important thing that we can really do is continue on with this kind of work and with this focus. So I would caution against trying to be like too perfectionistic about what it is that we're doing. And that is something I've had to kind of catch myself the last couple of days, of not putting so much pressure on myself to be like, it's got to be perfect and it's got to be this. And it's like, you know, humans make errors, and sometimes things are just not going to be as, you know, the perfection doesn't really exist. And so sometimes I think we put so much effort into trying to be perfect and trying to have things be perfect that we don't really enjoy the process, or we don't really understand how lovely it is that we are where we are in our, you know, development process and what we're doing. So again, look at where you've been dedicating a lot of effort. Look at where you have been very aware of like what is requiring a lot of like your commitment and attention, and what is it that maybe you feel like, man, I'm getting really good at this. Like, this is something that I know I can do, and I can continue repeating so that I can see similar results each time. I think that's where we need to kind of focus on, is what is it that we've been doing? What is it that's been going right? And kind of focusing our energy in that area. So with what we need to do, we have the Ace of Cups, which to me is a cup of like love beginning, and like our cup overflowing and coming together, and, you know, allowing ourselves to have new feelings and sharing with others. When I think of cups, I think of connections and community and, you know, feelings and intuition and, you know, like the emotional self, the different things that we tend to feel in our lives. And I feel like it's almost like this energy of like a new spring, you know, kind of beginning. And while we are currently moving towards the autumnal equinox here in the northern hemisphere, the big thing here is to look at where, you know, we feel that sense of connection and community, and how we can show up not just for ourselves but also like the people around us. Are there particular relationships and connections that are kind of entering our lives right now that we're, you know, opening ourselves up to? I know for many of us, we tend to be a little bit closed off and not be receptive to new connections, new relationships. But I think this Ace of Cups is kind of saying like, this is a time to share that love that we have, and to connect with others and allow this kind of new beginning, this door opening to things being a little bit different, to us showing up in different ways and kind of feeling different emotions and what we have going on. So I think that there's a lot of this opportunity for us to dip our feet into new water, so to speak, when it comes to connections and relationships. There may be a little bit of like that emotionality, I think, this week, just because we do have this full moon in Pisces, and it is a partial eclipse. So I know that that tends to kind of bring up a lot of this like emotionality and unexpected sort of energy for many of us. So just be aware that, you know, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be feeling our feelings. We need to be kind of connecting with ourselves and paying attention to these little things that maybe we are like, I don't really want to do that. Because I know for many of us, it's like, I would much rather do something than to feel something. So I think that this week we're kind of saying like, hey, yeah, you know, you've been focusing on like the physical, but what we need to do is kind of open ourselves up to the feelings. Now, what we need to release, we have the Two of Cups, which is interesting, being the card right after the Ace of Cups, right? When I think of the Two of Cups, I think that it is like an opportunity to come together and to find that kind of energy between you and other people that makes you feel like there is connection. And the thing with the Two of Cups, and I know some people look at it as like a new relationship and new loves and new connections coming into our lives that maybe are going to be significant emotionally, or that we have a lot of feelings for, I think that those are all valid ways to look at the Two of Cups. But with this being what we need to release is maybe this like expectation of how we should be in these relationships. Just because some people come into our lives doesn't mean that they're going to be as emotionally connected and like present as we would like for them to. So I think that this is going to be a time where we need to learn how to choose relationships that make a little bit more sense for us. And I think with what we need to release is maybe this like expectation that everything's going to work out the way that we want it to, or the way that we are putting pressure on it to at this current moment. And I think with, you know, this eclipse season, a lot of it is going to be revealing and highlighting how we show up, not just in service, but also for ourselves in a lot of ways. And I feel like that is that Virgo Pisces axis. And as we're moving into the Leo Aquarius axis of eclipses, where we're having kind of this sense of, I am opening myself up to being a little bit more aware of like what I desire versus what everybody else outside of me needs. And so I think we're kind of towing that line a little bit right now. And so I think with what we need to release is this sense of maybe having a lot of this like personal responsibility when it comes to what we're doing in service of everyone else. Not to say that you shouldn't do anything for others. That's not what I'm getting from this card. But I think with what we need to release, we're kind of given this opportunity to say, hey, you don't always have to do everything according to what everybody else expects of you and what everybody else is like pushing you to do, if that makes sense. This may be a time for you to take a little bit of a step back and kind of say like, look, yeah, I've been putting in a lot of effort for connection and community and for me to show up for everybody else, but I may not be perfect at it, and that's okay. So maybe we just need to kind of release some of these weird kind of like expectations we put on ourselves about how we're showing up. And I know as I've gotten a little bit older, I'm a lot more like relaxed when it comes to connections and relationships. And I'm not trying to put so much pressure on myself to be like always there and always doing and always this, that, the other. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that it's doing is stressing me out. And I don't want to do that anymore. So I think maybe this week is one of those where we're going to have to really reconsider how much pressure we're putting on ourselves to try to be all things for all people, because unfortunately there's just not enough time in the day for us to do that. So I think that this week we're having to kind of look at, you know, where are we pushing? That doesn't really make that much sense. Now, finally, with what we need to contemplate, we have the Seven of Pentacles reversed. Now, for me, the Seven of Pentacles is typically a card of like, we're waiting on results. We're waiting on the harvest. Like we've done the hard work. We're just kind of sitting there and there's not really much we can do. We're just waiting for things to kind of be ready for us and having to give that time and space. With this being reversed, I feel like maybe this is kind of saying we haven't really been paying attention to what we've been giving, what we've been receiving. Maybe things are kind of out of balance, and this being what we need to contemplate, I think that maybe we haven't really planted a lot of seeds for us to be able to have the results that we're looking for. Maybe this is going to be maybe this will be a good time for us to kind of reflect on, you know, what are we doing for ourselves, for our health, for our physical bodies? What are we doing for our, work, for our career? Things of that nature that maybe haven't really been in balance or haven't really had a lot of like things be a little bit more in, to say like a little bit more equilibrium, in order for us to be able to benefit from it later on, for us to kind of see the harvest. So I don't know about you guys. I know like this year I've kind of not been as, not to say driven, but I've had a lot of other things happening that made it a little bit more challenging for me to kind of plant these like longer term seeds, so to speak, for myself. And so I've been kind of reconsidering, like, is it too late to start now? Should I, like, do this? And, maybe I need to do it this way. And I've been kind of more stuck in like the mental process of things versus just like actively doing. So I think that this Seven of Pentacles reversed for this week with what we need to contemplate is that maybe we've been so stuck in the it has to look this way, or I should have started this shoulda, coulda, woulda energy, and moving past that so that we can really just say, all right, I didn't get a chance to do it then, but from this point forward, I can do this now. I can, do something else. So maybe we need to kind of contemplate like what long-term things we've been doing, which it's okay if the long-term thing that you've been doing is just trying to make it through and just trying to survive, because everything happening at the current moment just seems so whack and so mentally, emotionally taxing. The state of our current political landscape, our financial and economical landscape has been extremely challenging for so many of us, that I think for a lot of us we're just kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't really know what it's going to look like in the future. And so I think for many of us we're just trying to kind of be like, all right, I'm trying to make as wise of a decision as I can with the information that I have and where I'm at. And I think that's kind of the energy of this Seven of Pentacles, is that it is kind of giving us a little bit of this, like, say, of, are we asking for help when we need it? Are we showing up for people when they need it? Are we, finding community and connection and coming together to help serve those around us? And if we haven't, how can we start doing so? Because that is a big thing that I do try to do during harvest time. I always like to do a lot more of, kind of taking time out to donate my time, donate resources, show up where I can for those in my community. Even if I can't always financially help, I can always help with like service, acts of service, or, just kind of showing up and trying to do what I can with that. So maybe this is a time where we need to kind of contemplate, how are we showing up for one another at this time? And where is it that maybe we can say, I need help, or I can offer this, or, maybe it's like, I think for many of us, we're craving that community, we're craving that support, we're craving this like sense of, being able to belong to a space and a place. And I think, unfortunately, for many of us, we've become very isolated. And so I think maybe this week will be one where we're having to kind of consider a lot of these things and how we're showing up and what we're doing for one another. But we also have to avoid drama, right? So it's funny because it's like moon madness, right? And I feel like the eclipses always make everybody a little bit loony, a little bit crazy, a little bit wild. Acting out of pocket it seems like it is typically par for the course. And I think for our oracle message with the moonology messages this week is we need to avoid getting placed or put into situations that are kind of outside of our control. Like, let's not be so cold or so blunt or so just like blah that we tend to forget how other people may receive certain things. Let's not get caught up in the energies that other people may bring around us that don't really make that much sense. So I think the biggest thing here is to just, kind of stay in your own lane, do what you can. Like I said, one of the things I like to do is like kind of connect with my community, see how I can show up, how I can help. Things that I can do to kind of be, a little bit more rooted and centered in my experience, versus like being so caught up in like what's going on externally. And again, like I said earlier, with everything kind of going on here in the United States, with like the news and everything like that, sometimes it's like, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to the nervous system. So I've been trying to take some time away from like plugging in, but not being plugged in at all times, and not being so into it that like I forget that at the end of the day, as much as those things affect me, I there's so many things I can do to affect where I am currently. So I think if more of us start to remember that and start kind of showing up for the people around us and where we are, we can make a beautiful difference in our surrounding, communities and where we're at. All right, so I don't usually use this deck, as I said earlier. It's a beautiful deck, but I don't really reach for it that often. All right, so we got the future card. So here, in my future, I will become what I was meant to be. So this is just talking about things unfolding, some things kind of happening by chance, other things kind of happening because we have embodied and manifested that energy. So maybe we have been judging ourselves a little bit about what our future will look like and what that will mean for us. Maybe we feel like our future is just going to be filled with a lot more hardship, a lot more difficulties, things not really coming together. And so the thing is that we need to look at where we can embody and feel and experience the energetic choices that we're making. Now, as someone who does like the term empath, I know sometimes people use it as like a dirty word these days. I think that this is kind of saying like, hey, there's so many things that we've been learning. And when it comes to energy, there's so many different things that we can learn, that we have to learn. And so I think the big lesson here is that it's kind of saying like, hey, there may be some challenging lessons, but this is all because there's changes coming. There is an opportunity to be curious and to kind of move into something else, and really understand that all that I need is present before me. Like everything that I need at the current moment is already here. So are we allowing ourselves to be present as our future is unfolding, or are we stuck in like an endless cycle of, where we kind of feel like I'm just doing the same thing, I'm moving through the same motions, nothing is ever going to be different, and, what is it that we need to do to maybe break some cycles when it comes to how we feel about ourselves and what we're carrying? I think with the future card, especially, kind of here with eclipse season and things like that, where there's so many things that are trying to shift and change. Like I was saying earlier with that avoiding the drama and kind of being overwhelmed by it all. Maybe a lot of us have kind of felt like, what's the point? There's no reason why we should do this. But the thing with humanity, that if you study any kind of history, is that so many of us, over time, it's it's hope. It's hope, it's change, it's the people that say enough is enough, that initiate the shifts and the changes necessary for things to go from one direction to another. And I think many of us are kind of gaining our soul strength, so to speak, in order for us to kind of move into this next phase and to start initiating those changes in very real ways. So I think that this week will bring us some interesting challenges, some things to maybe consider, to kind of keep in mind, being very aware of what it is that we've been putting a lot of our energy into. Are we being receptive to the things that are trying to come into our lives, but also not trying to do everything that we can all of the time for everybody else. And to just kind of, I know some people love the whole oh, let's get into some drama, let's get into it or whatever. But I think that it would serve us best this week if we try to avoid drama that doesn't really affect us. This is not the time to kind of be messy and to go, reading all the comments on Facebook or whatever and be nosy. I think if anything, it's kind of saying hey, guard your energy. Look at what are you trying to do for yourself in your future, and how will that look for you moving forward? So I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that this reading finds you well. I want to say thank you for being here with me. I appreciate you guys watching. Please take care, stay safe, and as always, make good choices. Bye.